Welcome to this edition of the Awakening Women podcast. I'm your host, Leanne Oaten. And in this episode, I'm talking about you ladies who are out here talking about how much you dislike being with an emotionally available man. This came about from one of my Instagram posts, which is often times where I read them and it's an inspiration to dive deeper on the podcast. So I don't have a shortage of ideas. And if I do, or if I'm like running dry on where to go, I just have to go into my comment section. And so this comes from a recent post where I wrote, addressing issues in a relationship should never cause a damaging blow up and an emotional hangover. So if you have had these type of knockdown, drag out arguments and that you actually end up having an emotional hangover, you know what that's like. And someone wrote, I really thought I had changed the pattern, and after 4 months back with another emotionally unavailable man who cannot talk about things. So that's all I have for context. I'm just going to go with it. But hopefully she doesn't mean that she got into another relationship 4 months later, because that never ends up going well. So what I want to talk about with regards to emotional availability in men, and this is really my take on it, because I really like to look at the things that we have in our external as representations of our internal. And then some women take it and go, oh, you're victim blaming, or I didn't ask for this. No, of course you didn't ask for it. But it is a mirror, at least this is how I choose to see life. It's a mirror for your level, like water seeks its own level. You're at your level. This person is at your level emotionally, psychologically, even though you think you're above it because you read books, because you go to therapy and you think you've done the mindset work or whatever, you think you've done the personal growth work. Check in with your relationship. Who are you with? If you're with someone who is emotionally vacant, you cannot have a conversation without it blowing up, without it turning into this big drama show, without the emotional hangover, because it was just so explosive and confusing and aggressive and destructive. That's where you're at. So when you say, I want to have an emotionally available partner, how emotionally available are you to yourself? Because we can say we want an emotionally available partner, but if you're not in touch with your emotions, your vulnerable emotions, then you're going to end up having someone that comes in that's not super comfortable with emotions either. And there are differing extremes, right? Men are not women. So this is a whole other kind of side note. Men are more linear. They're more factual. They're more logical. And women, we are more intuitive, emotional. And that means that hopefully in a healthier, balanced relationship, we balance each other out, where we can look to the masculine logic to balance out our emotionally driven feminine. But that doesn't mean men don't have emotions and that women can't use their logic. It's not what I'm saying. But if you are wanting emotional availability, what does that even mean to you? Are you expecting to have a girlfriend in your man? Do you want him to behave like your girlfriends do, when you can sit there for 4 hours and talk? Like, I can not talk to a friend of mine for months, and then we can talk for 2 hours on the phone. Most men might not be able to really do that, especially when it comes to emotional issues. They're not going to want to sit there and hash things out and just talk about emotions all day, every day. So what do you mean by emotionally available? That they can't talk about things without running away, they shut down, they won't discuss things, they stonewall, they twist things around every time you try to have a discussion to divert the topic, they minimize your feelings, they use gaslighting to make you question your reality. So there's a lot of different tactics there that can be used that definitely point toward emotionally unavailable, and then on the other spectrum is abusive, when it is done in such a way that it is intentionally trying to hurt you, intentionally trying to cut you down and tear you down and manipulate you. So this is very different. So emotional availability doesn't mean that someone is abusive. So this is really important context. And a lot of men, unless they are in therapy and really just going into their psyche, they're not in touch with their emotions like women are. They're not. And so if we're expecting them to be, then we might be expecting too much. But then do you want a man that's just going to invalidate your emotions, that's going to not be able to, show care and concern for how you feel, and at least care if they've done something that you didn't like or that is not working well for you? Do you have space that you can articulate that without it turning into a shit show? You see, that's the difference. And that is where you need to get clear. What is it that you want? What do you mean when you say you want an emotionally available man? Because I think too many women are expecting their men to be their emotional processing, receptacle. And most men have a limited capacity to discuss emotions, and they're not your therapist. And so you need to have other outlets. You need to have other friends or places you can go to get those needs met. And now, of course, there's going to be times when you need to have those hard conversations. So yeah, do you have a guy that wants to run? He will not have those conversations, or it turns into a fight because he blows up from getting defensive and he can't take anything that's around criticism, and it just goes off the rails, right? So get clear. What is it that you would want in a partner? Now, the second part to this, and this is just my own theory, is that you rarely see a really emotionally healthy, in tune, emotionally mastered, emotionally intelligent woman who's in touch with her body, in touch with her emotions, in touch with what is really going on for her, that is going to be someone that's with a quote-unquote emotionally unavailable man. The flip side is you're not going to necessarily see an emotionally immature woman that's acting, throwing her emotions all over the place and doesn't have any emotional mastery around how she reacts. Could you imagine that would be an attractant to a secure, healthy, masculine man that has his shit together, who is able to meet you and have adult conversations? Do you think that type of man would want to go for a woman that has zero emotional mastery over herself? Probably not. So you got to think about that. If you are seeking that kind of relationship, and I think most of us are, we want some version of, I want you to be a man and handle shit and be able to handle me when necessary, but I also need to be able to handle myself, and I need to be able to process my own emotions and deal and figure out what is going on for me, and I'm not just going to go put it all on you, because regardless, my emotions are my emotions and I'm responsible for them, and your emotions are your emotions, and your shit is your shit. But we come together as adults to co-create the relationship dynamic and make it feel like a safe space. And ladies, you've got to take 100% ownership for your emotional side of the street. And this doesn't mean that you take ownership for the abuse that you might be experiencing. But this woman commented about she left one of these relationships to end up in another situation like this. It's because you can't just leave and expect to have something different just because you left. You have to be different. You have to be in touch and in tune with your feelings. And when you see that someone is not there, they're not available to have these conversations, they're not able to take feedback, they're not able to adjust and do things differently, then you walk, you don't stay in it. And yes, it's more complicated when there's kids and houses and money and marriage all mixed in. Yes, it is. But that doesn't mean that it's impossible. Many, many women walk away from very complicated situations. And it starts with putting that energy and focus onto yourself first. It starts with getting in tune with how you're feeling, your emotional mastery, your emotional connection, being in touch with what's true for you, and ungaslighting yourself to the point where how you feel is how you feel. It's not necessarily that you're blaming the other person for it. You have to own why you feel how you feel. And then you look at it and you ask yourself, well, what in this can I tolerate? What within this is is my stuff, right? And this is where a lot of women come to work with me because they're like, I want to know what my stuff is, what's his stuff. We're working together, or we're trying to heal together and all this. And, I've heard it all. But regardless, then I would say, okay, then you need to put the full focus on your own side of the street, your own feelings, your own truth, and getting back in touch with you, your center, your goals, the things you need to focus on, your alone time. That is how you get clarity on what's working and what's not in your life, is by getting back into self-connection. It's the only way. So if you're in this situation now and you're ready to start taking charge of your own emotional state, your own inner work, I invite you to sign up for my upcoming Relationship Clarity Bootcamp that's coming up on October 28th through to November 1st. That is where you're going to learn all about where to go from here with your relationship. And you're going to learn the 5 levels of awakening, where you're at, and the work you need to do to ascend up the awakening ladder, because you have to learn how to be emotionally available to you if you truly someday want to attract your emotionally available equivalent in a man, in a partner. If you are not healthy, you're not going to be at the level to attract someone more on your level that's capable. And you will attract a similar level to where you are. And hopefully maybe even someone that's got a few levels ahead of you in some areas. That's great. You can grow together if each of you has more strength in one area or the other. Women tend to be the emotional center, the one that's more intuitive, that can guide the relationship as far as emotionally speaking. But that doesn't mean that the man is not making any effort, that they're just sitting back and you're doing all the work. No. This is where there becomes this imbalance, because women are taking on the entire emotional load for everything, parenting, the relationship, making sure that the relationship is going well. No, like, we can take responsibility on some level if it's what we want to be doing, as far as like where we're not controlling and mothering a man, but where we are, hey, like, things are feeling this way, or I'm feeling this way. What can we do here? And letting the man sort it out. But if you are with one that doesn't want any involvement and that is just passive and doesn't give a shit, then you can't have those type of conversations. So you have to get clear on what kind of partnership you want. So here's something you can do. Write down all of the traits and things that you would like to see in a partner. How do you want them to respond to you? So really look at traits. Like, he needs to be able to validate my emotions. He doesn't have to be able to understand them and fully grasp where I'm coming from, but he needs to find a way to validate them. And in what way? Do I validate me? I need to validate me. I need to validate my emotions. I need a man that is there for me when I'm in my emotions, or I need a man that is there for me when I'm struggling. And in what ways? And in what ways are you there for you when you're struggling? Do you see? It's all within you. You've got to start there, because really no man, partner, friend, anyone can fill those voids. We have to fill ourselves up. And then our relationships are the extras, right? You can't expect a partner to meet all of your needs. So when women are saying, I need an emotionally available man, I need someone who's emotionally available, we can't have conversations, well, you're not connected to you. And that behavior is a match for how you treat yourself. So everything comes back to self. It's that whole adage of look in the mirror. Okay, so how am I treating me? How am I there for me? How am I taking care of myself, my mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical house? How am I taking care of my feelings and emotions? Am I denying my emotions? Well, you probably are. If you're in one of these relationships, there's a lot of emotional denial that goes on in order to be able to carry on in these things. So you have to get clear with you. You have to awaken to the truth. And we're going to talk about that in the boot camp. That's day 1, is lifting the veil and awakening to the truth of your situation. And that's the focus of that first session. So if you're ready for this and you want to awaken, you want to evolve and get to a place where you're in conviction about your next steps, about staying or leaving regardless, then make sure you get yourself in the boot camp. And you can head to leanneoten.com/clarity bootcamp or head to the link in this episode show notes to save your seat. And I will chat with you in the next episode. Take care.